Welcome to this week's Leadership Hacks, our second one. Thank you for being with us. Leadership Hacks is where we take some leadership principles and we break them down so that they could be very manageable and applicable to our situations right now and have a profound effect in our leadership and building up our leadership and how we lead. We are in our second one of Servant Leadership series, and today we want to be looking at leading from the bottom up. So that's what we're going to look at, leading from the bottom up. Let me read a passage out of Mark 9, verses 33 through 36. And they came to Capernaum, speaking of Jesus and his disciples, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all." And he took a child and put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, we must become like this little child. My paraphrase of the last of it, we must become like this little child. It's called servant leadership. In other words, servant leadership inverts the pyramid, the leadership pyramid, that triangle type pyramid that goes up. It inverts it so the top becomes the bottom. Servant leadership is leading from the bottom up. That's what a servant leader does, leads from the bottom up. And so as we do that, we raise up our people. We raise up those in leadership with us. We raise up those that we're training by getting down on the bottom and lifting them up instead of ourselves. It's to equip and resource. Servant leadership is all about equipping and resourcing. It's less about me and more about others. Others that I could equip, others that you could equip, others that you could resource and I could resource, so that we're raising them up. And as we raise them up, the whole church or your whole organization rises with it, including yourself. Here's a quote from John Maxwell that I love. "People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care." That's servant leadership. It's not about, caring about how much they know or how much I know that I want to impart to you, but it's more about caring about them. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. See, you could come in with all this knowledge and all this expertise, but if they don't know you care about them, they're not going to be able to receive that. So we want to become servant leaders. We want to invert the pyramid. Servant leadership resources others to thrive. It resources others to rise up, not ourselves, but others. So when we're leading as a servant, we're there to push upward those on our staff, those that are volunteers. We want to push them upward and lift them up. Servant leadership encourages. In servant leadership, we encourage others. We share words of encouragement with those who we are leading. We encourage them. We lift them up. We help them succeed. We give them the tools. We give them the freedoms to succeed in that. We lift them up. And part of lifting them up is to praise them in public. Praise them for what they're doing and what they've done on whatever project or whatever ministry they're in. Praise them in public. That'll lift them up. Release authority. We need to release some of our authority. We need to release it to our leaders. We are to release it to our volunteers, giving them authority and releasing them to win or to fail. So as we do that, as we release them authority into them, giving them authority. You have authority over this, to lead this, to do this, this job, this ministry project, whatever it might be. But in releasing them, we release them to win and to fail. And when if they fail, we don't say how horrible they did, but we help lift them up and we help them walk through what happened. And then we encourage them to step out again and continue to grow. In servant leadership, we hold our leaders accountable. Servant leaders, we hold them accountable. We don't lord it over them. We're serving from the bottom up, but we hold them accountable. In other words, we give them clear direction. We give them clear parameters of how to work with it, and we give them freedom to do it in their way, freedom, and that they may do it as they see fit in those parameters, but we hold them accountable to fulfilling it. So how do we just don't let them go, but we hold them accountable. We say, how are you doing? We follow up. We give benchmarks so that they may succeed and we might see them rise up. And another part of being a servant leader, we listen to them. Sometimes we've been in leadership long enough, we just think we know it all and we just want to impart it all into people. And that's fine and good. We want to impart to people, but we need to listen to them and learn from them. Well, here's a quote, and I'll end with this quote from Woodrow Wilson. It says this: "The ear of the leader must ring with the voices of the people. The ear of the leader must ring with the voices of the people." Are we hearing the voices of our staff, our volunteers? Are we hearing the need of the people in our communities? Servant leaders lead from the bottom, and they have a listening ear. We'll see you next week.